In the uncharted world of pure imagination, theater director George Coates is a master of discovery and creative cultivation. For the past 13 years, he has focused on the production of large-scale, highly original theater experiences that combine verbal, musical, and visual languages with new electronic technologies. The results have earned George Coates a worldwide reputation as a theater maverick, out to break as many boundaries as he can imagine. Since founding his non-profit company, the George Coates Performance Works, in 1977, he and his diverse collaborators have created 10 major productions, each as distinct and visionary as the next. His work utilizes the gifts of talented and eclectic performers, from actors, movement artists, and opera singers to South African and Eastern European vocal groups. Coates brings these elements together with innovative stage designers, composers, writers, and visual artists working with projected images. After 13 years playing to sell-out audiences around the world, Coates' company has made San Francisco their permanent home. An abandoned cathedral has been transformed into a unique 300-seat performance space. The theater opened in 1990 with the premiere of George Coates' phenomenon, The Architecture of Catastrophic Change. It is where we spoke recently. Are you trying to change the audience's perceptions?
I would like to help people in any way I can to learn more about how they perceive reality. Okay, so one way of doing that might be to scramble a little bit of the learned preconceived ways of perceiving and to put it back together again in some new and unexpected and unusual ways, and to give audiences the opportunity to see how they respond and react to a reordered world. And in that sense, I guess, we succeed to the degree that people are not quite sure what's going on. And to put them in that same situation I like to be in, where I'm not sure what's going on. What's going on here? Why is it that I'm having a good time watching and hearing something that I'm not sure I like? I'm not even sure it's good art. People don't behave like that in the theater that I'm used to going to. I've heard that response. In fact, one time I think we were at the Geary Theater and we were doing a production of Right Mind. And this was a production based on the multiple personalities of Charles Dodson, who a lot of people know as Lewis Carroll. And we had all of his personalities out there on stage, and we used the acting ensemble at ACT, a rather extraordinary group of character actors, to personify the many manifestations of Charles Dodson's very complex psyche. And we thought we had done fairly well at presenting a very, very mixed picture of this extremely strange Victorian. And the audience seemed to really enjoy it. And at intermission, a man got up and he slapped his program on his knee and he turned to his wife and said, "Mildred, I just do not like imagination." There was a man who knew what he didn't value, and he felt ripped off.
Don't you think there's a fear of the imaginative process?
Well, it scares me. I mean, in the motorcycle of my imagination, I'm always frightened, terrorized oftentimes when I encounter imaginative stimuli. Okay, so I'm in it for the thrills, I guess you could say. But the culture that we live in generally doesn't value imagination. The education system in this country certainly doesn't value imagination. We know that because when they make cuts, it's the art programs that are cut first. Now, why is that?
Even with the art programs, they begin with dot-to-dots often.
Why doesn't this culture value imagination? What frightens this culture so much that it feels that imagination is a threat? Why is creative endeavor creative activity, imagination, why is it always suspect? Why does the culture seem to, for instance, children are often told by their parents when they hear something they can't understand, or they've had a vision and they see something that shouldn't be there, and they report the event to their parents. The parents will say, well, Johnny, Sally, that's only your imagination. Now go back to bed. When that event happens, that child has just been told that your imagination is not to be trusted, certainly not to be valued. And you've taken something from that child. You have taken a humanizing aspect, a quality of what makes us human, and you have strangled it. You've just told the kid, it's your imagination, not to be taken seriously. Go to bed. I think that that is a form of child abuse.
What could we do in our education systems that would nourish imagination?
Well, when Johnny or Sally come forward and say, Mommy, Daddy, I've just heard or seen something in my room that's really strange, Mommy or Daddy should say, great, let's go in and see if we can see it too. Let's play with it. Let's not suggest that it has to be distrusted or discounted, or let's accept it.
It seems to be something we're told to grow up out of rather soon. It's okay for a certain age group and not okay after a certain point.
Right. Well, it might be the job of creatives, of artists, to keep that child alive, keep that playful, imaginative, visionary capacity alive and kicking. It might be the role that the artist plays in culture to not grow up in that regard, and to not betray the child inside who can hear and see things that others can't. It's not that it's not there. It's just that maybe others have lost the capacity to hear and see them. But they're there. I mean, what is it? What is it in that room that kid has heard or seen? Why doesn't Dad or Mom wonder what the hell's going on in there? Because they don't trust their own dreams. Why is it people don't remember their dreams? Why do they write them off as dreams? Oh, you're dreaming. It's not really considered a vital activity. Something's going on. What we might do to help reaffirm a value in creative, imaginative response would be to listen to our dreams a little bit more, and to listen to our children when they tell us about their visions and fantasies, and to see what we can learn from it.
It isn't just the business of artists.
No, everybody knows these things, but for some unwritten rule in human interaction, by and large, we deny this phenomena. We deny these experiences. We do not give them the kind of credence we give the 6 o'clock news, and there's where all the illusions are. That's where the disinformation is coming from.
Do you think the media is truly helping us to inform our reality?
For many, many years in Eastern Europe, the theater artists were the most important means of getting information that existed outside of the official media. And I understand now that since Poland is no longer under the grip of Soviet dominance and the censors are not there, that the theater in Poland is losing some of its force. And people now are going to newspapers, and they're going to films, and they're going to the television as they never did before. In this country, in Western culture, we think that we live in a society that has no censorship and that is free and that has a free flow of ideas. And so we don't value our theater as a alternative place for other information that you're not getting. But indeed, that's where the other information is now. You have to go to your artists, you have to go to your visionaries, you have to go to your painters and your filmmakers and your theater artists if you want to find out what's going on outside of the consensus reality perpetuated by the official culture. And the organs of the official culture, chiefly network media, television, are not interested in celebrating your dreams or the celebrating the different cultural manifestations of a creative tribe of people in some faraway place in the world. They're interested in making you a better consumer. And they're trying to deliver audiences to the advertisers. And they know the best way to do that is to put pablum on the air and reinforce certain fears and relieve them with television commercials that promise, you know, the real thing.
How do you get beyond the consensus reality?
Well, what I'm saying now is that the culture better stop finding its imaginatives, its creatives, and its artists as being threats. They, in fact, may be holding a release mechanism, a safety hatch from the sort of broad-based, sort of collective consensus culture that is leading us into some very, very bad places. I mean, I think you're going to find that the 90s will bring a reemergence of the value of creative activity as an alternative to the broader commercial culture. Because it's becoming clear now that where the culture is headed is to a global genocide, a kind of self-destructive death. If we're going to send armies abroad to put out fires, put the one out that's in the Amazon. It's cutting off our oxygen supply. You will not hear the media say that, but you might start hearing it be said in theaters now. You might hear an alternative press begin to emerge because it's becoming a matter of life and death.
What responsibility do you think the artist has to address the political issues of our day?
Nobody is saying that the northern industrial cultures are engaged in an imperialist war in the Mid-East for resources that they say is theirs just because they say it is. It's not being said now. Well, you might start hearing it now in your theaters. You might start hearing it in small little out-of-the-way theaters. You might see your avant-garde becoming more politicized as you see the culture becoming more and more in the grip of an industrial imperialism.
There is a responsibility of the theater, then, to shed light?
Well, there's a responsibility for us as alert, attentive human beings to help each other become aware of what's going on around us. And when it's a self-destructive, life-threatening situation that we're in, we've got to alert each other to it. And it means now that artists who've been on the outside of the mainstream will be able to, perhaps, be the first people to come along and say, hey, this is what's going on. And we might have to start doing it.
Does criticism then enter into your thoughts when you're working with the next step?
Criticism never enters in. Criticism always enters in. Criticism is something that can be of very little value. Criticism can be a very, very important part of making your work what it is. Criticism is as varied as the criticism itself. and as the people who are responsible for it.
1,000 ideas to find one.
Well, there's a lot of trial and error, and then there's some error, and then we make some mistakes, and then every so often we'll come upon something that stops us.
How do you know when you find
Because everybody is shocked, or in a state of everybody's world stops for a moment when we see or hear something that gives that sort of aha, eureka.
And yet there has to be a commitment to community. There has to be some commitment of all of these people to stay with each other through the process.
You know, you're asking me to answer questions for a wide range of artists who participate in these collaborations, and I think they all come at it with a different sense of commitment and community or need or desire, and that it's impossible to make generalizations about this kind of thing. I can't say, yes, it's very hard to have all these different contending forces and values and art forms and cultures represented in one performance, but it's all made possible through the use of what? Peer counseling, codependency, compassion, a paycheck. What is it? I don't know. There's as many different reasons as there are people working in this form. So
You have said that you can measure your success by how much more debt you have to carry.
well, I think that sometimes when you're successful at building music theater and a community, an audience for it, you're going to get into some big trouble, because music theater is an extremely expensive proposition. So oftentimes you find yourself hat in hand going to the philanthropic community and saying, please help us make something that we can't quite describe to you in cogent terms that you might be able to value in the way you can an opera, a symphony, or a ballet. But indeed, this is probably the only city where it can be done that I know of, to the degree that we've done it here.
In theater, the usual playwright tools of conflict, the development of a storyline around the resolution of conflict or the tension, is something you seem to avoid and create a different model. Why is that?
Well, I'm a pacifist. And as a pacifist and a resistor to barbaric behavior, I think it's important that we create new models for human interaction that don't play out the conflict model. I mean, when you look at the history of drama, you're really looking at the history of human conflict. Somebody's going to get somebody. Somebody's going to do somebody in. Someone will escape the impending doom of some villain. It has been the story of heroes and villains, good guys and bad guys, and it's a very old story, and it's a tiresome story, and it's not a very creative story, and it's a story that I think has a negative influence on human relations. So I'd like to maybe, in some small way in our work, create other models, new ways of alternatives to the conflict model. So instead of having a good guy and a bad guy, or a hero and a villain, let's come up with a dynamic that's equally as compelling, but doesn't carry all the baggage of that very old tale of woe. What about the dynamic that exists between the impossible and the inevitable? Between the, that can't possibly be, but there it is right before my very eyes. What about the unknown and the known? What about the juxtaposition between cultures that are never seen together? How about an opera singer and a gospel singer? There's a tension of form there, but it doesn't necessarily mean that one is going to do the other in. And the play, the dance, the way that those the qualities of those two art forms mix can create just as compelling an evening of theater as somebody who's going to chop your head off.
The play of imagery in one of your performances is created by technology, technological tools. It's something like a magic show. What gives you the imagery?
Now, you just said it was something like a magic show. And you want me to tell you how many false bottoms I have in my suitcase?
And what's up your sleeve?
And what's up my sleeve? And there's a lot of art science in the work and a lot of technology, I guess. We play with what's available resources. Technology is emerging all around the world. I think that Silicon Valley is a nexus for a lot of new forms, but it's certainly not the only place that new forms are being developed. We have little linkage programs with the computer industry and with the emerging technology industry. We have a group called SMARTS, the Science Meets Art Society, where we encourage the designers and engineers from these different emerging technologies to come forward with their new inventions, their new materials, their new software, whatever they're working on. And the artists from our group here will play with these new materials and see what they find, some new applications.
In the collaborative effort,
Yes.
Isn't it difficult with many different kinds of artists? One hears of the artistic ego. Isn't it difficult to come to some consensus?
It's impossible. It can't be done. And I'm not so sure it's because of artistic egos. I just think that when you have a lot of sensibilities that come from a lot of different worlds, you have different values, and what's important to one performer is not important to another, particularly when you have different cultures mixed.
As you do.
As we do. So, no, you can't come to a consensus. And this may be a selling point. Let's not, again, think the only valuable work is a work that funnels everything into some kind of consensus reality. Perhaps a confluence of contending realities might be a more interesting way to go. Maybe we can coexist with mutually exclusive values. Yeah, it's very difficult.
What's the glue?
Well, again, I'm not so sure that glue is the material of choice here. Maybe we need to find out how things are going to break down. Maybe we want to find out which way the chaos of it all is going to take us, or how we're going to respond to these different forces all mixed up. I mean, after all, 1989-90 was a year of walls falling all over the world. And there are cultures now meeting cultures that have not been in contact for quite a long time. And what's going to be the glue? Nobody wants any glue anymore. There's been a lot of glue for too long a time. And I think maybe the movement and the interaction and the new relationships, the dance of opposing, conflicting, mutually exclusive forms of creative expression, these kinds of differences are what make it all work.
In a recent article, you're quoted as saying that it is through creativity and creative people that civilization empowers itself.
It's a broad view. In the big picture, human innovation and creativity has propelled us in some degrees forward. And I think to a certain degree, ignorance is a big problem, maybe the big problem. And if consciousness is the solution, and if art in any way helps to expand our consciousness, then maybe we are working toward a solution.
This has been a conversation with George Coates. I'm Bettina Gray.
Hey, yeah, I don't recognize you either there, buddy.